Good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody hear me? Last time I was here, my voice didn't ring through, but I guess the sound system's working today.
Bring the microphone up a little bit.
Was it?
To your mouth, yeah. Perfect.
That better?
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for the naval hymn. That meant an awful lot to me, being an ex-sailor. And a very profound piece of music, very beautiful music. It meant a lot to me. Thank you so much. Well, Linda suggested that I do this sermon for today as our congregation celebrates Memorial Day weekend. I accepted with the hope that as a member of the Great Depression, World War II generations, perhaps I might present my personal perspective, recollection of those days, especially World War II and Korean War. Of course, I am honored to be given this podium, but before I begin my narrative, I thought I would give you some statistics that unfortunately are dissolving with the passing of time. 20 million Americans served in the various branches of the military in World War II. 20 million. Fewer than 400,000 of this war machine remain on planet Earth. As a proud member of those survivors, I can say without equivocation that every one of those 20 million emerged from this epic battle passionately dedicated to the elimination of war as a vehicle to resolve disputes among nations. And I thought I'd take you back, reaching back in my book, A Gay Man's Odyssey Through the 20th Century and Beyond. Let's start out with April 20th, 1944. And although it was Hitler's birthday, I was unaware of this anniversary as I began a trip from suburban Glen Ellen into a naval recruiting station in downtown Chicago. With just a few weeks remaining until my graduation from Glenbard High School and World War II dominating all the facets of Americans' daily existence, I skipped classes that day and made a life-changing decision. Like the advertising posters beckoned in those days and today, join the Navy and see the world. The message motivated me to ignore my innate shyness and start a journey into an unknown territory. I was 17. My next birthday was just a few weeks away, making me a prime candidate to become part of the rapidly expanding wartime military machine. One very significant influence on how this all came about so suddenly was my football jock pal, Jack Hod Miller, a year younger than I in a junior in school. But Hod was a maverick, a hulk of a man who lived life to a beat out of sync with the rank and file high school social structure. No doubt, Hod was admired for his powerful linebacker accomplishments and fearlessly stomping opposing linemen on the gridiron. But the petty pecking order of our school's social structure became an intolerable irritant. Guess you might say that Hod was a rebel without a cause long before James Dean became a film icon. Despite his physical prowess and good looks, Hod was not happy and decided therefore to jump ship and join the Navy. His decision was just the catalyst I've been waiting for. During my senior year, life at school had disintegrated into a pariah state. How this all came about is another story, but the bottom line for me was misery, rejection, depression. All this I quietly kept from my immediate family. So when Hod came up with this off-the-wall idea, I jumped at it, knowing there might be a way out and into a new life. So the two of us got up early that school morning, grabbed the Chicago Aurora and Elgin, the suburban Tunerville trolley, and headed for the unknown, uncertain, somewhat frightening world of the U.S. military in wartime. It took a full day to walk through the physical, psychological, IQ testing, but the day's end, Hod and I were then full-fledged naval recruits. Hod was inducted immediately and went off to Great Lakes for his boot camp training. As directed by the recruiting office, I was instructed to finish my senior year and be inducted the day after graduation. When I returned home late that April day, my dear parents were dumbfounded. This was such an out-of-the-blue announcement. Nonetheless, they were most supportive once they realized this was an irrevocable decision and that their baby boy was about to leave the nest. Graduation day was May 26th. I left for boot camp the following day. I'll never forget waking up the big day departure to look up and find my beloved mother standing over my bed and sobbing. So one final time, the James family went down to the Chicago Roaring Elgin Railroad Station, where I boarded the trolley to save myself and start a new life. But instead of going to the nearby Great Lakes Training Center, as was Hod's fate, our group of inductees boarded a train and journeyed through the night and found ourselves Camp Perry, Virginia, the former CB station. This unexpected destination, located just outside Colonial Williamsburg, just added to the mystique and excitement of my new career. I had joined the Navy to see the world, and my first day as a sailor had taken me halfway across the country. Not a bad start. So every year I say with a sneer and gratitude, happy birthday, Adolf. In your evil plan to change the world, you most emphatically changed mine. Now there was another good friend in high school. His name was Frank Moulton. Frank was a gangly kid, thin as a reed, 6'3". He was a high school geek. And actually the geek did not exist when we were classmates. We were children of the Depression, when Little League soccer moms, structured intensive athletics for all use, they were a fantasy of the future. Unless you were a truly gifted athlete with a bent for football, basketball, you missed any chance to participate in organized sports. And that's the way it was. And like Frank, I was a geek. Our parents were too busy keeping food on the table, the rent paid, to find time to encourage shy and secure youngsters into organized sports. Later in life, in college, I did participate in intercollegiate swimming, but that's another story. Frank and I formed a friendship that gave us strength in those difficult days as the Depression faded away with America's entrance into World War II on December 7th, 1942. We were painfully aware of the Depression as we both had part-time jobs to pick up spending money. Frank worked at Walgreens drugstore in the old Glen Ellen Bank building, and I was a newspaper carrier of the Chicago Daily News, later went to work for the National Tea Company as a produce clerk with this chain grocery store, now lost in history and mega-mergers. We were much more aware of what our hormones were screaming. Instinctively, we knew our sexual preference inclined heavily and dangerously for the boys in our school, our classmates. Gay rights, gay pride were light years in the future. We knew what we were. We didn't know how to put a word on it, but we found comfort in the fact that we were kindred souls. His friendship was one of a naive closeness, a pillar of fortitude and guidance during some extremely difficult times. In other words, we muddled through the morass of social rejection that can only come from the pecking order cruelty of any high school social structure. I, as you know, escaped to the Navy, leaving from boot camp one day, and after graduation, abandoning trauma, depression, rejection, and Frank. Without a doubt, this move changed my life. Had I stayed home to continue confronting animosity, sarcasm with every turn, I could have easily disintegrated into a life-ending despair. Today, such actions by teenage gays are epidemic, but then my reprieve was the U.S. Navy. But what about Frank? After graduation, he continued working at Walgreens, got drafted into the Army. In late '44, was felled by a sniper's bullet on the island of Luzon in the Philippines, just a few short weeks before the war came to a victorious end. He was the only member of the class of '44 to lose his life for his country. And he was gay. Who knows where his life may have led him? With his inner sweetness, had this gentle soul survived the war, he probably would have found himself teaching, maybe medicine, law, or garbage collecting. Whatever career he might have chosen is now moot, and that's it. His potential, his promise belong to the ages. Maybe we didn't have a word for our sexuality back in those dark days of the Middle Ages, but that's not a problem today. We've come a long way since those days when we were lost, confused high school boys. I am grateful that I survived this long to witness the evolution of incredible progress for gay rights and recognition. In no small way, we owe a lot to my dear Private Frank Moulton, as his sacrifice allowed our great country to remain intact, strong, and free. And with gays emerging closer to virtual and total civil rights, we are much more integrated into the social framework than we were in 1944. Sadly, as I look around the corner towards the third decade of the 21st century, we can't ignore the fact that there are many countries where gays are imprisoned and put to death. I celebrate Gay Pride every day of the year because of your gifted generation, John and Ward. You and 500,000, Frank, died in this war. And you died so America might remain a beacon of freedom and justice. And yes, I must remind our countrymen that tens of thousands of those World War II casualties were gay and lesbians. Yours is a very personal memory, my dear friend. I promise it will endure. And I'd like to close bringing us up to date and the Iraqi war. And this is a eulogy, a dedication to a young Army sergeant who was killed in action in Iraq. Your story came through, 10-4, Sergeant Mark. You were pure canvas, thoughtful, introspective, a gentleness in your sunflower eyes. Yet every fiber, a warrior, pride of self, country, Kansas, and family. Your clean-cut countenance glowed golden, a wheat field in the fall, reflecting a root image, America's inner strength, its soul. Finding you in a CNN profile was a gift and a warning. How much longer will we allow our brave young farm boys to become cannon fodder while we sit at home, fearful that our taxes are too high for a push-button war, a war that calls for precious little sacrifice beyond a peaceful stupor where self-indulgence rules supreme? How much longer must we endure the madness? How many months, years, buckets of blood? How many broken bodies, hearts, and flag-draped coffins? How many prayers, lamentations, wailing, firing squads in cold gray cemeteries? When will we stand up, stop this festering insanity, dear God? Will we learn how hollow, how futile, how ungodly, sacrificing our young on the altar of war? Yes, I care about brave young men dying in a hot, hostile desert many thousand miles from the barn. And yes, I cried bitter tears over precious young lives poured into a funnel of futility. And to you, Sergeant Mock, this old veteran salutes you. Your battle objective was served, your bravery and conduct under fire left no doubt. Your sacrifice spoke volumes about you and your brothers in arms. It's my honor to mourn your death, Sergeant Mock, and proudly share grief overwhelming your Kansas kin. I celebrate your life, a plucky young man-child who left his life, his home in the heartland to fight and die for family, for country, for me. Dedicated to Sergeant Wilson Mock, killed in action, Iraq 2006. Thank you.